welcome to Mitchell Consulting Group's series on Mitchell University. Today we're going to be talking about SAP Business One and how to manage budgets within the system. Today we're going to be working with SAP Business One version 8.82. So let's begin. We'll go through the process of initializing the budget, setting up the budget, and we'll look at some of the budget reports. This webinar is being recorded. It'll be available on our website, so you can visit us at www.mitchellgroup.com. So the first thing we need to do when dealing with budgets is actually initiate the budget. So we're going to go into Administration, System Initialization, and General Settings. And on the tab, we have a Budget tab. So we're going to do the Budget Initialization. And we have some options, so we can block deviation from budget. This means that once we define a budget, if we go over the budget, we won't be able to enter documents against the budget. We can do it with a warning. This will let us know that we're deviating from the budget, but still allow us to enter the corresponding documents, or we can do it without a warning. So we'll leave it on for a warning. We have two options. We can do an annual budget or a monthly budget. We're going to choose a monthly budget, which is the default, and we're going to make this relative when we enter purchase orders, when we enter goods receipt POs, and accounting information, such as journal entries against the GL accounts and AP invoices. So let's click Update. It's going to mark all the P&L accounts as budget accounts, so we can say yes. We'll click OK. So now what's happened, if we go into the chart of accounts, and we select a P&L account, click on this one here. We'll look at the account details, and by default, we've made it relative to budget. You can eliminate accounts if you do not want to use them for the budget, or by default, we've set everything relative to budget. So in the case that you don't want to have the account relative, you can come in here and deselect it. It will not be part of the budget. So that's the initial setup. Once we do that, now our budgets are ready to start working with it. So we're going to go into financials, the budget setup, and let's look at some things here. First, we're going to look at budget scenarios. What we can do is we can actually create a budget, and then we can create scenarios around the budget. So we're going to go here, so make this a little bit bigger. Let's see. So right now we have our budget for 2012. We're going to go in here, and we're going to actually select 2013. And again, the information you see here is based on the posting periods that you have defined. So if we look and we go to Administration, System Initialization, Posting Periods, you would go in here and see that we have 2013 defined. Once we define our new period, so when we define 2014, that'll be available for us to then create the budget. So we're going to go into 2013. We're going to right-click, and we're going to add a row. So we're going to create here our main budget. Let's update that. Let's go back to our 2012. So this is how you would create the new budget. Now let's go back into 2012. So you can see we call this one operating. Right? Again, we can right-click. We can add additional rows. So we can have, for example, a new budget. We can have it based on the old budget or the current budget, and we can do a ratio. So we can create different budget scenarios. In SAP, there's one main budget that you're going to enter the information. So the main budget, in this case, we've called it Operating 2012, is the main budget. All the other budgets that are created will work off that. So for example, if I want to create like an optimistic budget, I want to say that I want to, whatever my regular budget is, I want to say this is a 10% above the budget. So if I enter amounts for the main budget, then what I can do is when I compare it to new budget number one, it would give me 10% above. So we can create budget scenarios. The budget scenarios, again, are just allow you to do different criteria in the system, but you're still only dealing with one main budget. Okay, so Let's just cancel that. We don't want to put that on. So again, we have our one budget here. We can copy budgets and import budgets. We can copy budgets from one year to the next, and we'll see how this works. We're going to define, for this example, we're going to define some amounts for our 2012. We can look at our actual balance. That's the original. And we want to bring that into our 2013 budget. So this allows us to basically copy the budget from one year to the next. We can also do an import from a different database. As you notice here, we're in the OEC computers. This is the company we're using. So it allows us to take a budget that's already defined and, again, bring it into the same company. We can also import budget scenarios. So what we can do is we can then choose our database or our company. So if we had multiple companies, we can go here. We can choose a company that we have defined. We can create the scenario. And again, the destination is going to be the database we're in. We're in the OEC Computers company, which you see right here. So we can do that. So let's actually enter some data for 2012, and then what we'll do is we'll copy it into 2013. Before we get into the budget, let's look at the budget distribution methods. We have a few distribution methods. Again, since we're dealing with monthly budgets, we can look at ways of distributing the amount. We have a budget distribution method here called equal, which means we're setting the information equally across all periods. So for example, let's say you had a travel account, travel expense, and you wanted a budget of $1,000 a month. Here you can define the distribution method equal, and you can enter the $12,000, and it will distribute $1,000 to every month. Again, you can create these based on your preference, based on your company. So we can go here, and we can see we can create, and this is an ascending, so the budget's growing towards the end of the year. Maybe you're budgeting a lot for the holidays. This is a descending, and so on. You can set these up as many as you want. These are the ones that are just defaulted in the system. Once you enter the data, you can always change it, which we'll see in a minute. So what we've done so far is we've gone into administration, system initialization, general settings, and we've initiated our budget. We got started up. Okay, when we do this, it prompts us to mark all the P&L accounts as relative to budget, which we can see here. We'll click any of the accounts. We look at the account details. We can see that they're relative to budget. That's the setting. And again, if you want to deselect, you can deselect them off here. Then we go into the budget setup. We've looked at our budget scenarios. Again, right now we can create as many budget scenarios around the budget. Every year has one budget. So you can see here for 2011, we have one here, 2006. Again, we can see the main budget. And we can see here that what we've done is we've created a new budget, which is an optimistic. So whatever our main budget is, this is going to be a 10% increase along the budget. You can see we have our 2012 budget set up, and we went in and we created a 2013 by opening the year. We just do a right click and we add the row. Again, this information that you see here is based on your defined posting periods. So right now in my defined posting periods, I don't have a 2014, so therefore it's not available for budget. Okay. We talked about the budget distribution methods. Again, we can set our distribution methods. We can have equal. Again, whatever method we choose to use, what this will do is it will distribute the amounts. So we only have to enter the yearly amount. It will distribute it across the months. So let's go look at the budget. We're going to go to our budget. So we're going to go here. Again, we're going to go to our 2012 operating budget. We're going to click OK. What we're getting here is we're getting all the GL accounts that are relative to budget. You can see here. Display accounts with no budget. Right now you can see that because none of them have a budget. If I was to deselect this, I would only see the accounts that I've defined my budgets for. Again, we know from working with standard SAP, we can go to our form settings. We have the ability of looking at the different accounts here. So here we have some distribution rules set up. Again, if we're dealing with different currency types, so we can see the information here we can define. So let's look at this one. Here we have a revenue account. Our default distribution method is equal. Again, we can define new, or we can just do a manual. So we're going to go simple. We're going to say that this is a revenue account, so therefore it's a credit. So we're going to put 120,000 as our amount. Okay, we can create parent accounts, so we can link certain accounts to them. If we want to go here, we can actually define an account number with a parent account. This is for when we have multiple accounts across the board, we can link them. So in the case of we have multiple travel expenses, we can link them using the parent account. So we can see here, we're going to go now into this one, and we're going to put, say, 140, and so on. If we look at the individual account, so if we double-click on line 1, we can see what we've done. Again, because we requested it for it to be equal, we have it equal across the board. We have the ability of changing these. Okay. We can also just go into the account here by double-clicking on the line, and we can actually go in and set up the account. So we can go here and we can, again, put it in. So we're just going to leave it as this one. So do it that way. So if we update this, again, we're going to say yes to all. So everything's now updated. We can look at some actual, we're looking here at the actual sales for this account. Again, if we have the option here, we're only displaying accounts with budget. Here we want to display accounts with and without budget. So again, we can see the information here. So what we do is we would set this up, again, like individual setups. You can do it manually. You can also, what we recommend is we use what we call the DTW, the Data Transfer Workbench, and we can import these. Typically, most of our clients, what they do is they create the budget for the months on an Excel spreadsheet. Makes it easier. They get it from information that way, and then we use our DTW, our Data Transfer Workbench within SAP, and we import or convert the data into the actual system. So again, we can see that. So let's go now and let's look at the budget. So again, here we see the budget we set up. Again, if we click it, we see the budget we set up. Okay, if we look at the 2013, no budget's been defined. So what we can do now is we can then use our copy with the budget scenario. So let's say we have our 2012 budget already in place, and now it's time to create the 2013 budget. So we want to use our 2012 budget as a reference to bring all the data into 2013 and make whatever changes we want. So we can do it that way by going into here. We're going to copy the scenario. So we're going to say copy the 2012, and let's copy it to the 2013 account. We're going to execute that. See the operation successful. Now when we go in here and we look at the 2013, go here and look at our 2013, you can see that the information from 2012 was copied over. The copy is very nice. It allows us, once we get a budget in place, as we go from budget year to year, it gives us a reference or a starting point. Now we can go ahead and say, well, we want to increase this budget for 2013, and we want to say change this to 12,000. And so on. So we can then operate that way. So again, we've changed our budget. We can see the minute we do that, the method went to manual by automatic because we're not using a method at all. We've actually just gone in and made our relative budget changes. So to recap that, we saw here under the budget setup, we have some options. We have the budget scenarios. Here we defined our budget scenarios. Again, these are based on the posting period, so you would have to first define your posting periods. Once you have your posting periods, you can then define your budgets. You always have one main budget that works off, and then you can have budget scenarios. The budget scenarios can be, for example, say an optimistic or pessimistic budget, so you can go here and create a new one, and you can say you want this to be based on the operating and you want 90%, so you want the budget a little bit lower, or you can go ahead and make it 110% to make it 10% above and so on. You can also see here that we can copy. The copying allows us to work within the database we're in. So we're in the OEC Computers database. So we can copy from one budget or one budget year to another budget year within the same database. If we're working with multiple databases, we can do an import. We can then choose the company or select the companies we have from other information. And then what we can do is, again, the destination is the OEC Computers. That's the database we're in. So we can set it up here. So the copy allows you to go in within the database from one budget year to the next budget year. And the import allows you to go cross companies. So if you have multiple companies, you can take the budget from one company and import it into the other company. We saw our distribution methods. Again, we saw that from when we set it up. We can create distribution methods. Generally, people use the default, and they set everything across the board, and then they go make their changes. Or you can go into manual mode and just enter the data yourself. We saw our actual budget that we can see here. If we look at our 2012, we can see the budget. We can see here some actual information. So if we look at the account, you can see the sales revenue, and you can see the total amount in here. We don't have any information on these accounts. This is the value of the account right now. But again, within the year, we would see the information within the current year. So we can do that. We can also set authorizations. Again, once we're working with this, we can actually use our authorizations. So we want the people not to work with the budget. If we are a super user, we can go to Administration, Systemization, Authorizations, under General Authorizations. We can see here under the budget. Again, we see we're grayed out because we're logged in as a super user. Let's choose a user that's not a super user. So again, you can see here, you can set up authorizations. So typically, super users will have authorizations. Obviously, people that are not in the accounting department or people you do not want to make any changes to the budget, what you can do is you can set the budget setup for no authorization. And that's in the authorization. So if we go to Administration, System Initialization, Authorizations, and General Authorizations, we can go to the Find, and we can find our budget. Let's set it up this way. Okay, so let's look at some of the reports now. So let's go into the financial reports, and let's look at the budget reports. So here we have the budget report. Again, we can look at, we want to do an annual, a quarterly, a monthly. Again, we can select, using the operating 2012. We can look at the local currency. We can look at system currency. We have different currencies we're dealing with. We can look at future balances, information not within the given range because we're looking at the 2012 operating account. And here again, we can select our dates to work with. We're going to execute this. And you can see here, if we display our level 4, again, you can see the information. So you can look at the revenue accounts. You can see what we have budgeted. Again, for the entire revenue, we have this amount budgeted. We can look at the actual. We have it here. We can look at the difference in dollar amount and difference in percentage. So we're looking at the total. And again, we're looking at the month here, January. And we can see in graph form. You can look at it this way. And again, we can go through here for our current information. We can look at a balance sheet with a budget, the trial balance with a budget, as well as the profit and loss statement. In this case, since we did the revenue accounts, let's go here to the profit and loss. And again, you can see the date. We're working with the 2012. We can look at the posting periods, the scenario we're using, the 2012 operating account. And again, this is where we would have the multiple scenarios for the optimistic and pessimistic budgets. Let's actually do one of those so we can see it. Let's make this based on the 2012. Update that. Let's put this at 90%. So let's go back into the reports, the budget reports. Now you can see here we have the different budgets. Let's go to monthly. So if we look at the operating account and we execute, we're going to see here our level 4s, what we've entered. Again, this is our main budget we're working with. So we have 120, 140, and 100,000. We can look at budget 1. Open up, expand. Again, we went 10% above. We can see now our budget's increased. Because we're looking at our optimistic budget, so I'm going to add 10%. And this is for reporting purposes. The actual budget, you're going to have one actual budget per amount. So you can see that we're keying off that main budget, that operating 2012, but we're doing that. If we select the other one, new budget 2, we're going to get 90% of the original budget. And again, you can see here. So the budget scenarios allow you to create different scenarios as far as working with percentages above and below the actual budget for reporting purposes. So we can look at the budget, again, for the profit and loss, the trial balance, and the balance sheet accounts. Again, these are like the standard ones here. So here we have the balance sheet. We don't have anything entered for that, so we're going to go to the profit and loss budget. And again, we have the option here, looking at 2012. And the same thing, if we run this, we're going to look at the levels 4. And again, you're looking at the budget. If we go back, again, look at our budget 1, which was 10% above. We're going to get that. And the same thing if we go here to our budget 2, which is our 90% of the budget. We're going to see that. Again, within SAP, within the standard reports of SAP, you have some options. Again, you can look at local currency versus the system currency. Okay, in this case, local currency is the currency of the country you're doing business. System currency would be the currency of the general ledger. We actually do on our website, if you want to visit us, we have a webinar on foreign currencies, on the currency setup within SAP. You can visit our website to view that. You can import external codes. You can ignore adjustments. These are adjustments made in the 13th period. Again, you have options, display accounts with zero balance, budget relative accounts only. You can put the foreign name on the accounts. You can select the annual report, the quarterly, or the monthly. You can choose segmentations. Again, we know from SAP, we can set up our general ledger within segmentations. So if we look at the chart of accounts, we can see we have our segmentations here. We have our natural account. In this case, we have 3 segmentations. So if we want to do our segmentations, again, in this case, we have a division. So we can choose the segmentations we want. We want to only run, say, the head office or the remote office, and so on. You can do that within the regions we have set up. In this case, we have a department set up. We have an expanded view. Again, within the SAP reports, we can open up our expanded view. If we're working with projects and distribution rules, we can go here and we can select a project. Again, if we're dealing only with projects, we can choose a specific project, and we can run against the project or the distribution rule. This is new functionality that's in SAP 8.8. There's expanded distribution rules within the system, and again, that will be covered in another webinar in detail. So again, we can see that. We can run the report, and we can see the information. So let's recap what we've done today. To get our budgets going, we go to Administration, System Initialization, General Settings, and we see here we have a tab for Budget. We go ahead and we set up our budget, and we would initiate the budget. We can have some options. We can block deviation from the budget. This means we cannot enter the corresponding documents if we're over the budget. We can do a warning. So if we go over the budget, we'll see the warning, and we can leave it without warning. Okay, let's close that. So once we do that, we have our budget set up. Then we go into our financials. We go to our budget setup and our budget scenarios. Again, we would define our budgets for the given year we're working in. This information here you see is linked to the posting period. So you can see we have 2012 and 2013. That's because if we go to our administration, system initialization, posting periods, we can see here that we have 2013. If we create a new period for 2014, once we activate that, that'll be available for the budget. You can see here we have always one main budget that we work with, and then we can create budget scenarios around that budget. So in this case, for 2012, we have the operating budget for 2012. Then we have a new budget, which we're going to say make it 10% above the budget. So we're going to get an optimistic budget, and then maybe a pessimistic budget. So we're going to take our budget, and we're going to make it 90%. Again, within here, we can copy. So once we define our 2012 budget, we want to use it as a base for 2013, we can copy. The copy allows us to copy within the database we're in. So we're in OEC Computers. So we're going to say, in this case, we're going to take the 2012 operating budget, and we're going to copy it to the 2013 main budget, and so on. You can copy directly like that. It'll bring all the information over for you. You can also import. Import works the same way as copy, except what we're doing is we're choosing a different company. If we're working with multiple companies, we can choose a different company that we have set up. Then what we can do is we can select that. We can select the budget scenario. And then we, again, our destination is OEC Computers, which we're in. So we can take a 2012 from another company and import it to a 2012 or a 2013 into the current company. That's for our budget setup. Let's go back to financials. And that's our budget scenarios. We see our distribution methods. We can create distribution methods. Okay, in this case, we have an equal. So what we're doing is we're going to distribute the amount equally to all the periods. So in the case of you have a travel expense and you want to do $1,000 a month, you can enter $12,000 in the debit column and it will distribute it across. You can define these. For example, here we have one in ascending order, so the budget gets bigger towards the end of the year. And we have one, and so on. So depending on the seasonality, maybe your budget increases in the summer, so you want to just go here and do that. Or what you can do is you can just go ahead and manually enter the information. So we saw that in the budget methods. Then we actually go to our budget, and this is where we actually set up our budget. So we're looking at the operating year for 2012. We're going to click OK. And again, what we've done is we've entered here. So you can see here we're using the distribution method as equal. So if we double-click on line 1, we see here that we entered 120,000. So we distribute it across equally. If we want, we can, on this case, we can double-click on line 2. And if we want, we can change these. Let's say we want to round this up, so we want 11,500, and so on. Once we do that, we want to update the differences because now we've changed. We can see we don't have the amount here, so we're going to update differences. We need this to be 100% distribution. So we've kind of changed it here to 8.214 versus the 8.33. We click Update and OK, and we see that our method now has gone to manual mode. So again, this is where we would set up the budget. We can look at accounts with no budget. So we're looking at accounts with and without the budget, or we can just go here and look at only the accounts that we've defined. Again, what we recommend for this, for the initial time, is SAP has what's known as the DTW, the Data Transfer Workbench. What we advise is that if you want to create a budget, we can help you with that. Just set up your budget. Typically, on people do it on an Excel spreadsheet, and they have everything, and then we can import the budget in using the DTW, the Data Transfer Workbench, and we can bring the data into the budget. Once it's in one of the budgets, then you can use the standard SAP budget functions of copying from year to year. Just update that, click OK. We saw that's the budget, we defined it. So that's the setup. Once our budgets are set up, we would go into our financial reports, and we have our budget reports. We can look at a budget report, strictly the budget. So again, we can go annual reports, quarterly, monthly, and so on. So we're going to do a monthly, let's say. We can choose our scenario. So we're going to do our 2012. That's our main budget. Set this for level 4 so we can see everything. And again, if we go here, we can see our main budget, which is the 120, 140, and so on. We can compare that against our other budget. So we had an optimistic budget, which was 10% above. You can see we added 10%. We can look at our other budget, budget 2, the pessimistic budget, which is 90% of the actual budget. Again, you can see the information here. So you can look at the budget reports this way. You can look at it in a graph mode. You can change your graph styles. And you can also look at the budget reports relative to the other financials. You can look at balance sheet, trial balance, and profit and loss. We're going to open up the profit and loss since we've been using the sales accounts. And again, the same information. You can choose your dates. So in this case, we're just going to run the whole year, but you can go month to month. We're taking, again, our scenario. We're looking at our operating or our main budget. We can look at local currency versus system currency. We can bring in external codes from the general ledger. We can ignore adjustments for period 13. These are adjustments done to the year. We can print accounts with balance of 0. We can do accounts only that are relative to the budget. We can bring in the foreign names from the general ledger chart of accounts. And again, we can choose our annual, quarterly, or monthly report. We can do our segmentations. This information, as you know, comes from our chart of accounts. You can see our segmentations here. Again, you can see some other information that's coming. You can see the foreign name and the codes and the other information that you have the ability to look with. That's our segmentation. So if we go here, we want to do just one segmentation. Depending on how our GL account structure is set up, we can run it that way. We can also go to an expanded view. If we're dealing with projects and distribution rules, we can set this up. Again, SAP version 8.8, they've done a lot of expansions into the projects and distribution rules that give you a lot more flexibility. Again, that will be covered in detail in another session. So again, we can click, and then we're looking at our profit and loss statement, budget versus actual. See the information here. Again, we're looking at the budget amount versus the actual amount. We can see our difference in dollar amount and our difference in percentage. And we can do the same option. So we can look at the optimistic budget, 10% above. You see here. Again, as well as the other one, the budget 2, which was the pessimistic budget, which was 90% of the budget, and so on. So that concludes our session today on SAP Business One, using the budgets and setting up budgets. If you, we are recording this session. It'll be available on our website. Right now we're going to open it up. What I want to do is you have the option of raising your hand if you want to pose a question. Okay, we don't really have any questions, so we're going to conclude this. Again, once again, this is our series for Mitchell Consulting. We have our Mitchell University. So what we'll do is this is going to be recorded, and it's going to be put on our website. You can visit us at www.mitchellgroup.com to view the presentation. Once again, we thank you for your time, and that concludes our demonstration.